Hi there, I'm Scott. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and this is my YouTube channel, Stamping Scott. Welcome to my channel today. I am so grateful that you are here. We are featuring a step-by-step card making tutorial using a tried and true classic stamping technique called Emboss Resist. It's a really fun way to utilize one of your older stamps that you've had for a while and give it a whole new life. You'll be able to get your fingers all inky, make bursts of color, and bring your whole card to life in a very simple, easy to use, but impressive stamping technique. I certainly hope you'll join me on this card making journey today. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on a thank you card that I created, and it utilizes an old stamp, a well-loved stamp that I've had for a long time, and it was a part of the Shelley collection from years ago. Normally when I make a video, I do not use discontinued or not available product, but in this case, this stamp is very special to me. It's a medallion stamp, and the fact that Shelley Gardner designed the stamp, I've always felt very close to this, and I use it like every Thanksgiving. And these are my thank you cards for my customers and for my friends and family from this past November. So I really love it, and it's always nice to have a woodblock stamp. I do miss having woodblock stamps. They are a whole element of their own. And today I'm going to be using some embossing to show you how to stamp this image. And you can see it right here. You can see that I used copper emboss powder to create that effect. The colors we're using today are pumpkin pie, crumb cake, and cherry cobbler. Sounds yummy, doesn't it? And we're using a technique called Emboss Resist. And that is a technique where we emboss an image and then we use ink to sort of resist off of the embossing, which leaves behind a really cool effect in the background with color. There's like bursts of color. It's sort of a distress effect, but it's something that's been around for quite a while. I don't know if a lot of you remember the yellow sponges that Stampin' Up! Has had since, I think, day one. You can see this is about a half of a sponge. A whole sponge is, well, it's a circle. You get the idea. But I always cut them in 6 pieces per circle, and then I have 3 pieces here. And we're going to use sponges to do the Emboss Resist technique. The stamp set that I'm featuring, the sentiment, is current, and it's in the catalog, and it's Bloom and Grow. Beautiful stamp set. I actually have the framelits for this too, but today we are using the oval framelits. And the oval framelits are a part of a collection. They have both scalloped and standard oval. Let's get started. I'm just going to clear this stuff away here. There we go. Oh yeah, we're also going to be working with this rose gold thread. Really, really pretty. It's very, very fine, but it adds a nice delicate detail to the card. All right, so we've got 3 cuts of paper. Crumb cake is cut at 8.5 by 5.5, and we're gonna score it at 4 1/4. We have Whisper White cut at 5 and 3 3/4. And then we have Pumpkin Pie cut at 5 1/4 by 4. I'll have the measurements show up on the screen. So we're gonna start with the Whisper White. Put these aside. And because this is an embossing technique, we're going to use embossing powder, my embossing buddy, and I also have my Versamark. The Versamark is a watermark stamp ink that leaves a clear coating. You can use it on standard cardstock to sort of mimic the color of the cardstock, but slightly darker. But today we're using it for embossing. I'm going to put this aside, pull out my woodblock stamps. Now with woodblock stamping, you really want to press hard and you want to hold it down for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and coat my wood block with some Versamark ink. And yes, you can use your ink pad in this direction when you use a very large image. And I usually go over it a couple times because I want to make sure I have a nice coat of this Versamark ink. Versamark is a clear ink that has kind of a tackiness about it. It's like sticky because we want the embossing powder to stick wherever the image is stamped. That should be good. I'm going to take my Whisper White cardstock here and just kind of put it down. And I'm going to position my stamp kind of like off the edges of the cardstock. I want it to be, the medallion to be sort of positioned off center and over the edge. I'm just going to set it down. With woodblock stamping, I usually put a lot of heart and soul into it. So what I'm going to do is push down and just really, really push on it. That way I'm going to get a nice solid image. That should be good. And we're going to lift. And be careful when you use Versamark ink because it is clear. It's so easy to touch where you stamp that glue ink. Make sure you don't touch that. I'm going to see if I can get it to show up. I don't know if you can see that, but there is that watermark effect. So I'm going to go ahead and take a container. Just gently take that up. And we're going to give this piece of cardstock a bath with the copper ink powder, or copper embossing powder. I make up words sometimes. I don't know why I call that the copper ink powder. Do you ever have days like that where you say things and you really have no idea where your vernacular came from? It's like, I'll say words, I'm like, did I just say that? See, it looks really nice. I'm just going to take off a little bit here, and it's a nice smooth coat. It's very full, and you can see I have quite a bit of powder left over. And even though this is a tiny jar of embossing powder, goes a long way. I've already made like 10 cards like this, and I still have more than half of my jar left. But I use the copper embossed powder a lot for my projects. I'm just going to put that aside. There we go. And now we're going to get our heat tool. I know I've shown you this in my previous videos. With the heat tool, we're just going to wait for it to warm up a little bit, and then we're just going to lightly hold it still to watch the copper embossed powder melt. There we go. That looks good. There we go. There, see? Look at that nice effect. It's a nice copper color. Yay. Okay, so now we're going to do the emboss resist portion. We're going to take our ink. I'm going to start with pumpkin pie. And I'm going to get my sponge that I use for pumpkin pie. And I'm just going to kind of tap the sponge on the ink. And I'm going to use like motions where I go from the center out. And I'm just going to kind of go like this. And this is art, so there isn't one right way or wrong way to do it. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy, this is where you can enjoy getting inky fingers. And I'm just going to kind of color it in here. Okay, I'm going to put that aside. Now I'm going to grab my cherry cobbler. And I'm just going to do bursts of color in between. Just like that. And you just kind of rotate it around. It is a medallion, so it's kind of nice to flip around. Isn't that fun? Just kind of like add your own special effect to it. All right, and I'm going to grab my pumpkin pie and go through some of those other areas and just add more of that orange color. It just pops out. See, look at that. Just pops it out. It's a fun technique to use with any background stamp or any images. I would probably have chosen to do this with some silver embossing powder. It'd be more bright. I've done this technique with silver, but I want to choose copper because it's very fall-like, and I thought it would be fun to use some copper embossing powder. Now I'm going to use some crumb cake. So in the original card design, I actually sort of distressed the edges with crumb cake so it looked like it blended in with the background of the cardstock because my base is crumb cake. And it just kind of makes those other color areas pop more. But some other cards I've done, I decided not to do that and just take the color all the way to the edge. You know what? This is creative fun. Do what you feel is best and maybe make a couple different variations. No one's going to know and you get to play at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and do the crumb cake again. That I'm just going to really rub along the edges. It almost mutes the color. Whoops. There's me being sloppy. That would not be the first. But once again, it's card making and crafting. Those imperfections look like they're intentional. There you go. And we can always fix it. Paper always bends back again. There we go. Ironically too, the ink will dry a little bit lighter than it is because it is a dye ink. So it'll look a little lighter than this. And the best way to make a color look a bit brighter is to mask it with a darker color or a more muted color. It could be like gray as well. But crumb cake is my favorite color of the season. So there we go. As you may already have guessed, watching my last video with cherry cobbler and crumb cake, you can kind of see the pattern here. Going into Christmas, I'm going to be using Old Olive and cherry cobbler. Those colors are going to be kind of fun to work with. Okay, there we go. We want to die cut this scalloped oval and this regular oval with crumb cake and cherry cobbler. And this is the layering oval framelits dies. I don't know, you guys. I use the layering ovals almost in every project I make. And I don't get tired of them either because they fit sentiments so well. And if you look inside, there are a lot of different choices. So, a lot of different sizes. If you have a big element or smaller sentiments, you have different size ovals and you can layer them. I keep calling them framelits because that's what they used to be called. They're all called dies now. Stampin' Up! Actually makes their own dies. Before that, we partnered with Sizzix to make our dies, and now Stampin' Up! Makes their own. So this still has the Sizzix labeling on. They will look different if you order them from our website, but they will be the same amazing shapes. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my cherry cobbler here. And I'm just gonna lightly coat my stamp. This is a photopolymer. And because this mat behind here has a little bit of a cushion to it, it's going to stamp my photopolymer perfectly. And what's nice about photopolymer is you can really eyeball where your stamp is going to go. So I'm going to kind of look where it's going to go down on an oval, and then I'm just going to go down. There we go. Press and hold. 1, 2, 3. Bloop. Look at that. It's a little bit off-centered, but that's okay. This is crafting, you guys. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'm going to reach for one of my sponges that I used with cherry cobbler over here. I think it was this one. And we're going to add some distress edging to the sides of the scallops, just to kind of give it that distressed look. You just take your sponge lightly, going around those scalloped edges. This is an oldie but goodie special effect we used to teach as demonstrators in Stampin' Up! Those of you that have been around in the Stampin' Up! Community, look at that, isn't that cool? Then we're going to go and put that cherry cobbler underneath just to give it a pop of color. Simple, very, very simple technique, but makes a difference. We're going to take our snail adhesive. Go. And I'm just going to eyeball it. Once again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just going to, although I'm pretty OCD about perfection, but this is why I preach it in my videos that you don't have to be perfect. It's self-training for me. So I'm training myself to not worry about not being perfect. There we go. Our card's coming together. See how nice that's looking so far? Awesome. Now what we want to do is we want to put that copper, or it's called a rose gold. Guess you know what? I'm not really quite sure what it is. I will have the description of it. You know, we've had copper, we've had pink, we've had rose gold. It's a very, very fine filament. And I just want to put a little bit around the vertical part of the card. So I'm just going to go ahead and take some tape. And I want to off-center it. Put it on the back like that. I think that's about right. Yep, there we go. And I'm just going to wrap it around. I don't know, 3 seems to be the magic number. 1, 2. I don't want to pull too tight. Now you can imagine, I have these ginormous hands and I'm dealing with this super delicate thread. It's challenging. If you asked me to make a bow with this filament, I would say, There are some things that are not worth pursuing. So I'll wrap it around and we'll just trim it with my Stampin' Up! Paper snips. There we go. Oops, I trimmed it too quickly. Okay. Blooper. Whoa! I get a little special effect going on there. Yay! Let's start that over, shall we? All right, so we're going to go around and wrap it a couple times. And this time I'm not going to cut the whole thread. There we go. There we go. Put some tape down. And you thought this was going to be the easy part in the card, right? Well, I certainly did. And we're just going to trim that one thread. There we go. It just adds a little dimension. I like that little extra thread in there. It makes it more fun. There we go. Now we're going to take my pumpkin pie and we're going to start framing our work. Take our snail. Because the thread is so thin, I don't need to use a special adhesive or dimensional adhesive. That thread will not interfere with my snail adhesive. And we're just going to go ahead and center that the best we can. Well, I definitely got inky fingers. All right. Now we're going places. We're almost done. We're going to go ahead and put this sentiment on here. Have our Stampin' Dimensionals here. Hey Alexa, tell us a joke.
What did the taco say to the sad burrito? We've all been there.
Ha ha. I don't know how many of you guys have an Alexa device. I have probably an Alexa in every room in my apartment. I don't know how that happened, but they're fun. They're fun to have around, especially if you need to get a joke or some inspiration, or if you want to know what the weather is tomorrow. This is a standard cut of paper at 8.5 by 5.5, and we want to score it at 4 1/4. So we have a tool for that. This is called Simply Scored, and this is a scoring tool. And I'm going to find 4 1/4 here, and just kind of push down and drag it out. That's simple as that. I do not use a bone folder. I have a hard time with bone folders. This just makes it easier for me. And then whenever the score line is, that's where you're going to fold down. Perfect, perfect, easy tool to use. All right, now we're going to go ahead and put our snail adhesive on the back of this. I wanted this to be an easy card. And you know that medallion stamp that I was talking about at the beginning is no longer available. It is actually an antique in the Stampin' Up! World. But you know what? eBay is a really great place to go to look for retired stamps. So if you love that medallion as much as I do, because I'm not giving mine up, you could probably find it there. Like I said, normally I would feature only stamps that are used in the current catalog. But this is a crafty thing, and I like the distress technique, and you can do this with any stamps in the catalog. This is called our painted glass. This is in the current catalog right now. And this image right here, this is almost like a medallion. You would be able to use that with this technique, and it's really nice. Plus, I love this set too with the bird and these kind of really nice classic script. But this would be really good for emboss resist if you didn't want to try to find that medallion. There are a couple doily stamps too that have this design if you want this background. Like I said, this is an oldie but goodie. I just kind of treasure this just because it reminds me how much I love Stampin' Up. It reminds me how much I love stamping and doing what I do and sharing what I love. And Shelley really started that whole movement over 30 years ago. And I'm so grateful for her. She created something that has brought a lot of joy with so many people. And so when I stamp with this, it's not just a pretty stamp. It reminds me why I love stamping so much. And it's really important to have things like that. So this woodblock stamp stays on my crafting room all the time, and I usually bring it out during Thanksgiving. That's my story behind this stamp. And there we are. There's the card. How about that? And like I said, I have a couple more that I've made. See, there's one here, and here's one here. I've been stamping away. So let me know what you guys think. If you like what you saw today, give me a thumbs up and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to create more video content on a regular basis, and I'm streamlining my process to make this a lot easier for me to produce creative videos so it doesn't take me 2 weeks to get them up on my YouTube channel. Also, check out my Facebook page, Stamping Scott. It's a community where I cultivate creativity, and I would really like you to participate in that community if you're interested in sewing and crafting, stamping. I do use it primarily for my Stampin' Up business, but I do encourage other types of creativity is there as well. I really hope you enjoyed this card making video today. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of my life on this journey of stamping. I am using these for my customers this month and to thank them for being a part of my life, and also some friends and family. And I encourage you to do the same. If you have any questions about stamping, Stampin' Up products, please leave comments below. You can also message me on my Stamping Scott Facebook page. Thanks everybody. I really enjoyed sharing this time with you, and I hope you have a wonderful night. Have fun with this because you get to get your fingers inky fingers inky. Yeah, at the beginning. Okay. Whoops. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Please check out some of my other videos on my YouTube channel, Stamping Scott. See you really soon.